First thing I had to do was fake an injury. Once I got a sling for my arm and a cast for my leg, my old trainer left me alone. Not only that, but I got out of yard work, hiking, and when my mom asked me to help her move, I said no.
Don't be miserable and muscle-bound. Be a slob now. I did it, and so can you.
Couch Body.
I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 I'm gonna get myself a modem.
All right, everybody, welcome to Lunch Therapy Interview Friday. This is Lunch Therapy 281. Pam Palmieri is here. Yeah. Pam Palmieri was asking me some questions the other day about stand-up comedy, and I'm thinking maybe she's going to do some of it soon. Lunch Therapy, hoy everyone. This is Lunch Therapy Interview Friday. Today we've got an incredible guest. You are going to love him. His name is Mike Knox. He is a comedian and has been for a long time. Also wrote 2 books. Happy Friday, everybody. Chuck is here. Kamala is here. Let's breathe. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Got a couple of announcements to make. One is I want to say thanks to Howard Ronan, hooked me up here with Mike Knox. Howard is doing poetry every single day. He's on like 27 or something like that for 100 days. He's doing a poem. He's performing it on Instagram. He is really digging deep on these things, really digging deep into the bench. Fox and Socks knocks on blocks. Thank you very much for that, Guignol. Happy Friday, Lauren, another comedian out there. Speaking of comedians, Ginny Sykes, Kamala Lopez, and I are going to be on the Rex show on Thursday, September 9th at 3 p.m. All things Rex Sykes show. Check it out. We're going to be talking about some crazy things, probably a lot of ERA, equal rights for people talk, and some talk about stand-up comedy and all that other fun stuff. Howard, the Daily Poet. Yes. Oh, I wanted to tell you, there's Howard now. Hope you're doing well, Howard. Rexit. Yes. Into the Night. So we're going to be doing that with Rex. Also, we want to send a shout out. Oh my God, Jay Patterson. Last episode, she was showing us those tracks in the I don't know, mud from that crazy animal. Sweet. And you know what happened? Just after that, she slipped and fell and smashed her arm. So send out some well wishes to her. She's got it in a sling. She hurt her leg. I don't think she's going to be finding that animal for us. So don't pressure her. Hopefully she'll be able to do some stand-up. Yeah, I think you can do it with, she might have to be on one leg. Always a fun time when Rex and Ginny get together. Yeah, it's true. Brothers and sisters. Oh no, I know, it's horrible. So hummingbirds, send out some good vibes, some fluttering of wings out there to Jay Patterson. Horrible. But today, Interview Friday, we have a live guest. Yes. And it's going to be cool. Mike Knox, Fred Flintstone poem today on Howard's show. Check him out on Instagram. Give us your handle. Yeah, so Mike Knox, let me tell you about him before we get into it. He is a stand-up comedian, has been for a long time. He wrote a book called Vivien's Reign, My Daughter's Battle with Epilepsy. So this is really interesting because we were talking about the vagus nerve, and what it does in the body, because I just found out about it. I didn't know about it. Turns out the vagus nerve is the key to winning the battle with epilepsy for Vivien, and we're going to find out more about that. This is a really, well, you'll find out, but it's a very personal story. This is Vivien and Mike there. The adorable picture, that's from the book. He also wrote another book, which we will talk about as well, which is about working in the prison system. It's called Straight Fish. So, and you know what? He's going to tell a crazy story. He has agreed to tell a crazy story. So let's get into this thing. Interview Friday, live. All right, Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you.
The crowd is going wild. It's so great to have you here. I've been reading your book. It's I just applaud you for your that's such a personal story, and for the struggle that you have gone through and probably continue to go through. Tell me a little bit about. Well, first of all, I just want to say welcome.
Thank you.
So in the story, you talk a little bit about your upbringing, where you came from. Seems like it's pretty interesting stuff. You were adopted, right?
Yes.
And you were adopted by a kind of a wealthy family in Pasadena. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, we forgot to breathe. Okay. There's 2 more breaths. So let's take in 2 more breaths. I got a little carried away. Maybe you'll breathe with me.
Okay.
In through the nose, out through the toes. Taking a deep breath, Mike. Let it go. So glad that they're here. I was breathing with Joel. 1 more. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Oh, that feels better. So you were adopted to Pasadena. You grew up in Pasadena, right?
Yes.
What was that like?
As being a father now, it was pretty great. It was a good childhood.
Yeah.
So looking back, it was great. I mean, my parents are a little insane, but I definitely wouldn't parent the same way my parents parented.
Really?
Different time.
In the book, you talk about it like didn't they break up like on your graduation day from high school?
Yeah, my dad's been married 3 times. So yeah, my dad left on my graduation day.
Really?
They're not too happy to hear about me writing about those things.
No. Did they read the book?
I don't know if they did or not.
You say
I don't
hear
know.
about me writing about those things. Sometimes it's
I've just noticed that in family doesn't like you writing about them. That's why I don't think I'll ever do nonfiction ever again.
Oh, really? Let's see. I've got Aaron Davis here. Mike, you built some amazing skate ramps.
We did.
Is that somebody you grew up with?
I did. We went to high school together.
Wow. And what are skate ramps? Or you were like a skater?
Yes, we built a
Skateboards?
pretty big ramp. We didn't know what we were doing, but we built some ramps in my backyard and in his yard too. Actually, I think he had a better one.
Really? We used to build those. We had dirt bikes, and I didn't have a dirt bike. I had like a Schwinn, I don't know, Caliente or something. And we used to build those jumps in the road, and you just, jump off of them to your peril and land on your elbow.
I did that also.
Did you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Jumping barrels.
In Pasadena as well. I had a friend that actually had us all lay down, and he jumped us on his motorcycle.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I
think I
tried
would've
to
done that.
stay closer to the jump because it's the last part. That's usually where Evel Knievel endos, right there in the end there.
Right.
Were you an Evel Knievel fan?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That was your time?
I had definitely had the toy and used to jump
You
that
did?
down the stairs. Oh, yeah.
Man, we used to send that
That was a
thing right
great
off the
toy.
roof.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love that. Well, what made you become a comedian? I heard that in the book, you said that you tried acting first. Was that just because you're in Los Angeles and you're I think I'll do some acting?
No, I did. I did drama in high school and I liked acting a lot. I just I just realized real quick, like I mean, I don't think my heart was in it at the time, but I mean, it's a tough, as you know, it's a tough business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tell everybody, if you want to get into, especially if you want to get into anything, get a job first.
Get a job first.
Get a job.
Did you then say, oh, I need to do something easy. I think I'll do stand-up comedy?
No, I actually started, I went and worked in a prison, and I said, if I can work in a prison, if I can be a prison guard, I can be a comedian. So
Wait a minute, why did you go work in a prison? What was that all about?
Just to basically test myself. I said, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to write about prison. Now there's a lot more information on prisons, but at the time, this was before kind of internet. So I wanted to figure out stuff about the prison, so I wanted to write a book on it. And then when I started to work in the prison system, because it's a lot, if you don't work in the prison system, you don't really understand what goes on in the prison. Most people are thinking, everybody's in there for marijuana and everybody in there is suffering, and it's kind of just its own city upon itself. And it's a pretty interesting and fascinating place, but it's a very depressing place, and I hated everything about it. But I also thought it would make a great book.
And so you were basically doing research for your book? That's pretty intense to do. Are you that kind of person where you just like throw yourself into something, just immerse yourself in something to learn about it?
It was just the kind of the quickest way for me to understand prison. I mean, I could have gone I really thought I could have gone and had a walk through the prison, but I felt if I work here, I could learn a lot more. And I definitely did learn a lot.
Committed some severe crimes. Maybe that would be a good way too.
I could have done that too, but I would not do well inside prison. I cannot. Mm. I'm telling you, inside that cell, that's suffering right there.
Oh man, I'm claustrophobic. I don't think
very claustrophobic myself.
That would be. They talk about. Do they have solitary confinement there?
Yes, and that's where I worked there about 3 years in solitary confinement in the hole. And I mean, it's just an unbelievable world. And you try to tell other people that don't work in the prison, they don't kind of understand. And you're kind of, dumbed down and not really existing, my point of view.
So what do you think do you think there needs to be prison reform? How would you change it if you could change it?
I think there definitely doesn't need prison reform. I don't understand the level of violence that needs to go on. I think if you just change people's minds that way and change the policies of the prison, yes, you could definitely change it. There's no reason to, there's no reason to be in an 8x10 cell. Not everybody. The problem is you're throwing everybody in together. Mm-hmm. Like you're throwing the serial killer in with the guy that stole an iPhone, and they're all kind of bunched together. And that's another thing. They don't kind of really vet out people. You don't, unless you want to go and look at what the crime is, you really don't know what a lot of these guys did in the prison. So
do they tend to tell you? You don't? Oh
yeah, they'll tell you. You do. You become, for the lack of a better word, you do become friends with them because you're seeing them every day and they get to know you, and it's kind of unavoidable.
Yeah. I was one time working with a guy who was out of prison, and I was working in a very kind of remote, I was working at a ski resort, cleaning toilets way up there in the mountain. I was always afraid to ask him, what he did to go to prison. He was out at this time. But my girlfriend at the time just went right up to him and said, "What did you do? Why did you go to prison?" And he said, "I gutted a guy." And we were like, oh no. Luckily he was nice to us. Do you think there's a lot of abuse that goes on in the prison system?
There is. And again, it's people who have been in and out of institutionalized and abused their entire life. And that translates into the prison. And then you just don't have time they should sit down and start to talk about, hey, your childhood is a direct result of this. And they just don't do that. There is a lot that they can do, but you're just housing and feeding people. So
this is my question for you. Have you ever seen that movie where they work with horses? Kamala here mentioned the thing, need to work with animals out in the fields. Have you ever seen that where they will rehabilitate prisoners by having them work with animals, dogs and horses and things like that?
Yes, and they do have dog programs, and they do have, one of the best things that they do is firefighting.
Really?
That is a great program, but you have outside people that are against the inmates doing firefighting. So again, it's just a constant struggle, complete chaos.
Why are people against that?
People are saying that they shouldn't have to be forced to be fighting fires. It's just, that's the problem, is that people aren't aware of what actually goes on in the prison. Mm-hmm. And it's a double-edged sword. It's, the media kind of sensationalizing things, the prison not saying what actually goes on. So people don't have a complete understanding of the prison or there's tons of camps out there that the inmates are working on and bettering themselves, but you don't really have the programs once they get out. You're a firefighter when you're in there, and then are you going to become a firefighter when you get out? Mm-hmm. So there needs to be that connection for them. And again, I could go on and on, but the inmates are basically people that they didn't have the same skills or the same, the same outlook on life going into prison that a lot of people, to me, I had never been in a gang my life. I didn't know anything about gangs. So when I got to the prison, that was really foreign to me. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's gangs out there. And that's why I say that in the book, was that I went to a private school. I went to schools where nobody talked about gangs. There was no gangs in our school, but it is LA County and there's tons of gangs out there.
Yeah. But you were in Pasadena. You actually were born in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
And then you were given up for adoption. Is that right? How did that?
I was given up for adoption at birth.
What do you think about that?
I think that it's anything with adoption. It's your loss of your parents. It definitely leaves you feeling empty, a hole in your heart for the most part. I definitely understand why people go to prison, mm-hmm. from being adopted and not being. And I did find my biological family, and they didn't want to see me. But at the same time, I can understand. I don't want to have to start all over and see a whole new family again. So,
yeah. Some really driven people have come out of the adoption also, like, Steve Jobs and people like that too. But he did seem like he was kind of seeking something that he didn't get, because of he was put up for adoption. So you're a dad now. You were being a stand-up comedian, and then you started a family, right? And
yes.
So that's the next book that we wanted to talk about was, okay, so you're being a stand-up comedian, you have a daughter and then a little baby, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with this epilepsy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So my daughter at the age of 2 started to have seizures, and this was about the time that I was doing comedy and writing scripts, and I'd actually gotten a TV show about prison.
Oh, really? Was that from your book?
That's not. It's not from my book, but it was. From it, based on it, but from it. Mm-hmm. But I'd gotten a producer and a director, and everything was looking great, and I was doing comedy a lot. And then when my daughter started having seizures, especially having seizures at night, I just had to give it up. So I didn't do comedy for about 7 years because of her seizures from age 2 to 8. It was just absolutely out of control. She was in the hospital, missing school. Just threw our family upside down chaotically. Mm-hmm. So from 2, at the age of 2, it was the day before her birthday, my wife found her in her crib having a seizure, went to the hospital, rushed to the hospital. The hospital did a great job at that time of saving her life. And from there, it was, going to in and out of hospitals, trying to figure out what was wrong. It took them 5 years to realize she'd had a fetal stroke. And that was the source of her seizures. So we were looking at brain surgery, but her seizures were coming from 4 different areas of her brain. So she couldn't have brain surgery. So that's why we looked into VNS therapy, which is basically a pacemaker for your brain. It's a small generator that's implanted next to your heart, and it attaches to your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is your longest nerve, and that's one's going up to your brain, the other one's going down to your stomach. They're very well connected because one of the things that my daughter was having was intense stomach pains all the time. She was having a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression.
Well, I can't even imagine how stressful that must be for everybody, but her in particular, because you never know. I personally have had a couple of seizures in my life. And usually I have a kind of a low threshold if I do certain things to myself. And in my younger days, there was drinking and being dehydrated in stressful situations. I could make a concoction that would make me have a seizure. And I had a couple of them. And it is a totally disorienting experience. And I can't imagine having repetitive seizures, because what happened for me at least is that I just lost a moment of my life. Some time, woke up in the hospital, and when I woke up, I didn't even know who I was, what planet I was on. They ask you questions and things like that, but I don't know enough about seizures because it's sort of a long time ago. What exactly is a seizure?
So the seizures when you're having abnormal frequency in your brain. So I like to look at it like your brain is being interrupted. I mean, you're getting hit by lightning pretty much. It's like a computer being turned off and turned back on. Same thing with my daughter was she'd have a seizure. It would take her 2 weeks to recuperate. She couldn't remember anything. And what was hard for me was when she was in school, she would forget everything that she had studied. She just was not having a life. She was on heavy medications. Those medications, when she would be at school, would then she couldn't be outside for long periods of time when it would be hot because that would trigger a seizure. She was just kind of really in a fog and not being able to enjoy her childhood. And
sometimes the medication is as
hard.
Bad as the seizures, because I remember they put me on some stuff, just hit me with like a rock, basically. They're just like, we're going to knock you out. And they gave me some stuff, Depakote and some other different things. And, you know, I felt like I had been knocked out. I was tired all the time. I was like, I can't live like this. I was like 20 years old. And I didn't know what any options were, but I knew that I didn't want to do that. So it's so great that you found something else. Okay, let's talk about the vagus nerve for a second here. We talked about this earlier in the week. I've got a little PowerPoint presentation for us, and maybe you can explain some stuff to us as we go. Okay, here we are. These are the cranial nerves. For those who might not know about this, there's a bunch of them, and these are the main nerves coming out of the brain. They've got all kinds of different names, and you can see pretty much from the name a lot of times what they do. But the main one is the vagus nerve. That's the biggest nerve, right? In the body. And from what I understand, it is like attached to all kinds of organs all the way down your body, the torso of your body inside. And it regulates a lot of different things. I'll show you what it does here. There's one more nerve, a couple more nerves, and a hummingbird. It's attached there in the brain. Apparently there are two major ones. They go down the body. You can see the vagus nerve here going down the body and just winds all over, and it's just paying attention to all kinds of different organs and making sure that they're working for breathing, speech, swallowing, blood pressure, heartbeat, hearing, taste, fertility, orgasms, bladders, and then it can also cause depression, anxiety, obesity. This is if your vagus nerve is not in tune. It can cause all kinds of different problems. And so the vagus nerve is stimulated by breathing, pranayama, which is also breathing, yoga, singing and chanting, splashing cold water, meditation, gargling, eating fiber, laughing. This is why being a comedian is a really good thing, because it actually stimulates your vagus nerve and can make you healthier. But this is, okay, so here's the book that you wrote, Vivien's Reign. And here is the device up there that was implanted into your daughter's body. Can you tell us about how that works?
Yes, so the circular part is the generator or the battery. Mm-hmm. And it's a very simple procedure. It took about 45 minutes to an hour. And then that lead goes and clamps onto your vagus nerve. And so when your heart rate goes up, mm-hmm. It's going to stop the seizure from happening. It's supposed to stop the seizure. Hers, I'd say most of them now are auto stem, so it's going off every other minute. And so it's constant. It's constantly hitting the vagus nerve, basically trying to keep, which it does. It's keeping the seizures at bay. It's keeping them back.
So it just does it on its own. You don't have to like press a button or anything.
Right. So the other thing that you can do if you feel a seizure coming on, it comes with a magnet, and you can swipe the magnet across that generator. And I've only had to do that in 4.5 years. I've only had to do that 5 times because she's been seizure-free for 4.5 years because of her VNS.
Wow. So apparently it attaches to one side of the one. There are two that go down, two main vagus nerves, and it attaches to one. The other one apparently connects to your heart, so they don't want to stimulate your heart with electricity or anything like that. So that's why they do this other side. This is FDA approved. It's like I was reading about it on the Mayo Clinic website. But is there any kind of problem with getting this done, or is there any kind of thing that impedes people in California or anything?
I would say the only thing that's impeding it is drug companies. It's a very, if you think about it, the VNS is just a cheaper way than putting yourself on medication for the rest of your life, which was one of the things that I loved about it, was that it's not a medication. It's working 24 hours a day. To me, it was like a bodyguard that was watching my child. And then we didn't have to, everything's set up, at least in the epilepsy field, as you're being tested with new medications coming through all the time. So when one medication fails, it's just they put you on another medication. And so what I loved about this is it's not a medication.
Yeah.
And I always looked at it like a new medication is just screwing with my daughter's, she's growing. So,
yeah.
What else is all these medications doing?
Do you have to keep, Pam's asking if you have to keep magnets away from her.
No, Pam, what was funny is when she first got it, she went back to school and they had built this giant magnetic mountain in the middle of her class. And I was like horrified, but we've never had any problems at all. Cool. All the things that I thought like a microwave would do anything, she's never had any problems. She's just, what I've loved for the last 4.5 years is she's been able to just be a normal kid. Prior to that, she just had a horrible, horrible childhood, and I hated every day of it because it ruins every part of your life. She couldn't sleep. She wasn't eating. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't do anything. It was just basically like a little zombie kid. So she's in a very happy place right now.
Oh, that's great. That's so great. Now we're back to this weird tunnel here. I wanted to put the book up on the screen again because in case people want to read it. One of the things that I really like about your writing is that it is extremely personal. You go through your thought. You're not just telling us the story of what happened. You're also giving us kind of a play-by-play of how you were feeling while you were doing it, while you were going through this. And I think for a lot of people, it can be inspirational because, there's so many medical things that happen that we have to figure out and have to follow. And it's so difficult, especially in the United States, to navigate the insurance system and the healthcare system. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that was like?
Oh, I could go on for hours about that. We had so many problems. I remember, the doctor might subscribe you a medication, but then the pharmacist doesn't want to give it to you, or the insurance doesn't want to cover it, or whatever it is. There were a few months where, I'd have to pay cash $1,500 for one bottle of this medication just because the insurance or the pharmacy couldn't get on the same page. So yeah, it's a huge out of control system that I don't know is ever going to get fixed, which is another thing that I loved about VNS. I don't have to go back to the hospital. We were going back and forth to hospitals and doctor visits. The other thing I hated about the system was that she would have a seizure, and then we'd have to go because of insurance to the general doctor, and the general doctor doesn't know anything about epilepsy, so they would think seizures were no big deal. Or if we'd go to the emergency room, they didn't think seizures were a big deal either. We had to sit down. She had a seizure for an hour in front of doctors at the hospital, where I had to go back and pull her medical records and then sit down with the hospital and say, hey, we're going to be coming here a lot. You need to recognize what seizures are. There are no laws in the state of California for epilepsy to protect anybody for epilepsy and seizures. There's zero laws. So
I remember in the book, you bring the baby in when she's having her first seizure, and they're just like, oh, she's having a seizure. Somebody was just like, oh, she's having a fever seizure. So
yes, and that happened many times. That happened many times where we would go, because that's the other thing is she's having seizures at night. So it's the night shift. They don't want you there. They're trying to get you in and out. They could care less. For me, it was always, I wanted some sort of empathy, and I rarely ever got that. And I think a lot of people are looking for that you're not going to get. And that's just something you have to face.
Yeah. So also, do you find that when you're in the medical system that sometimes you have to be sort of the squeaky wheel?
Every single time you have to, I had to do that the other day. Is the pharmacy said, well, we don't have a prescription for your medication. My daughter's been having the same medication for the last 14 years. What do you mean you don't have it? Mm-hmm. And so you've got to, again, call them, and you've got to be rude. You have to be the squeaky wheel. You don't want to. And then I obsess about it. I hope I wasn't rude to that person. Should I go apologize to that person? Because that's constantly what it is. You're constantly having to maintain everything. You're constantly having to bring, especially my wife and I were bringing medical records that would sit by the door in a bag, because we were in and out of the hospital so much.
Really?
And I didn't even know in the beginning, the first 2 years, I don't know where the hospital is because I never had to go there. I was never
that was the other thing that was great about the way you recalled the situation when you were first bringing her in for the seizure, is you were like beating yourself up for being a bad dad and not knowing where the emergency room was, and not knowing, because we do that. We start to, in a stress situation, we start to beat ourselves up. Do you do anything in your life to keep your head right through all this stress?
It's just normal. I think that, I was constantly in kind of groups on Facebook and stuff, and then it just became inner fighting with each other. So I just kind of don't comment. I do sometimes, but I try not to. But for me, it was just, you're living in the cycle of fear, and to accept that that's the way you're living. I just don't live that way anymore because of VNS. And the way that it was before was, I wasn't sleeping. My wife wasn't sleeping. We were taking shifts, watching my daughter all night long, waiting for the seizure that we didn't know when it was going to happen. When's that seizure going to come? That seizure would come that night. We would pick up our stuff, go to, race to the hospital, because usually time for us was a factor. We had to drive her to the hospital because the ambulance took longer. We lived pretty close to the hospital. So we chose to drive there. If I called 911, 911 would say, no, you're driving, you're supposed to go in an ambulance. You can't drive to the hospital by yourself. So that was another thing of, you just have to kind of set everything up, and you're living your life away from everybody, and you're kind of unaware of the rest of the world, what's going on. And to me, that was okay. It was just at least comforting to know that we'd figured out a pattern, and we know, hey, it's going to happen. The seizures are most likely going to happen from 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning.
Vivien had a really good mindset about this too. In the book, you said that she said, you get what you get, so don't throw a fit. The worst you can do is give up.
She did. She said the other
this
thing
is
that
like a little kid saying this to you, right?
Yes. And she is, she's 14 now, and people say to me, oh, she's 14. She must be a brat. No, she's a great kid. I couldn't ask for a better kid. And she's always had a positive attitude. And she would say stuff to us that would kind of blow my mind spiritually, that I just wouldn't repeat to other people because I don't think that they would understand.
Really?
But you do get into this very spiritual, because your life is in crisis.
Yeah.
And I was never a spiritual person before this, but you don't have anything left, you're looking for something else out of life and wondering what else is going on in life because all this bad stuff is happening to you.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it was this horrible existence. I feel that we've gotten past it. But I still kind of have the PTSD from it. And
of course,
and it's something that is with me all the time. I think it'll be all the time in my life, but it's just accepting. And why I try to talk about this and talk about my book is, there are many people out there, especially in the epilepsy community, that don't talk about it because they don't think anybody understands. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard. There's a huge stigma about epilepsy. It is very hard to talk about it, even though there's 65 million people with epilepsy. There's 3.5 million people in the United States, but it's a very fractured community. And I'm just trying to get out there and talk about it as much as I can.
Here's another thing from the book. You said 3 suggestions for dealing with any disease. These are yours. 1, try to find the positive side of it. 2, find support. And 3, get a theme song. I love that. You said your theme song was Eye of the Tiger while you were dealing with this?
Yeah, I just always, music is something that it was always happy for Vivien. And I always thought, if you can get something to make you have, your day is horrible, something to make it feel better. And she loved to sing and she loved to dance. And so that's what we would do, is play that song. She has another song too that she liked, that she replaced it with, but that was something that was always would make her happy, was
Eye of the Tiger.
That right after she got the VNS, it was probably a couple hours after her surgery, she was dancing around the house.
Really?
So, and with comedy, when she was having so many seizures and on so much medication, she couldn't understand humor. That was hard for me as a comedian.
Oh, she couldn't understand humor.
Yes, I couldn't joke around with my daughter. That's another thing that we take for granted. It's just the normal routine of the day. And she couldn't comprehend anything. It was just like she was just existing. And that was very sad.
Yeah. So, all right. So now we're going to move on and we're going to talk about your comedy because you've picked up comedy again. And here we are at the world famous Comedy Store. So now because your life has stabilized quite a bit, you've picked up comedy again. What is it like after so many years away, picking it up now?
Well, it's horrifying. It's always horrifying to me. But that's the reason that I do it. I want to get up on stage. That was always something that scared me to death was public speaking. So I forced myself to do it. I forced myself to, try to write another 5 minutes. That's what I tried to do. Try to get another 5 to 6 minutes. But I got to tell you, when I had picked comedy back up after 7 years, it was Howard that got me to do it.
Really?
And it was it was
Howard. All right.
It was Howard that got me back to do it.
That's so cool.
And I thought, Howard's up there having fun. I'm going to have up there and have fun too.
Now, was Howard a friend of yours before then? Like through all of this?
No, I met no, not at all. I met Howard at the Ice House, and Howard said, "Hey, I saw you do comedy the other day," and we got to talking. And nobody ever remembers me in comedy, so right away I was like, if this guy remembers me in comedy, we're going to be friends. So we've been friends ever since.
That's so great. We love Howard on the show. He's a big contributor to the show and definitely big contributor. I call him the darling of comedy. I'm the only one that calls him that, except for the rest of the people on the show, I guess. But he's a darling person, a wonderful person. So yeah, that's super cool. So is that your favorite place, the Ice House, or you've done the Comedy Store and lots of different places, right?
Yes, I do. I think different places you have different crowds. So yes, I like the Ice House the best, but there definitely is a vibe at the Comedy Store. There's a vibe at Hollywood Improv. But anywhere I can go, I think it's great. I really liked that the Comedy Chateau popped up in all of the COVID madness. That Felix was able to get that going. I mean, that's incredible.
It's amazing that somebody got something going in this thing. Maybe that was just an opportunity. I don't know. But it seems like that place is thriving. Do you have a persona when you do comedy? Because I watched your comedy and it's hilarious. You're a good comedy writer, but you also have a kind of way of holding yourself that is very, how can I describe it? You seem sort of like off the cuff, sort of like you're bothered by the fact that you've got a drink, you're drinking the drink, and you're just throwing out these hilarious statements. Is that something that you found, or is that something new, or, tell me about it.
That's very old, and that is definitely a crutch of mine. And that's comedy teachers tell me not to do that. They don't bring your drink up on stage.
You're totally
it's just whatever I look at it, whatever I can do to survive up on stage, to get up there and get off there. That's what I'm trying to do. That's my ultimate goal.
You get up there and get off.
But
what do you mean get off? Like get off the stage, or do you mean get off?
You can read them. I mean, you can read. My biggest thing is memory and trying to remember my lines. I mean, that's the hardest thing for me, especially as I get older. I'm just trying to remember that.
That's a myth.
The jokes.
I'm saying
that's
a myth.
No, that's hard for me.
But
you can read the crowd. You know what the crowd's saying.
Yeah, I like to. It looks like Tom Kearney was here. Tom Kearney, one of our favorite comedians. Tom Kearney, you amaze me. Tom has a movie called Brothers Inc. that's playing in all these festivals. He's just on fire. Anyway, that's a big compliment from him. You know what? I also have struggled with memory, trying to memorize things. And I found that I'm a visual person. So I memorize things visually. And maybe there's something in that for you as well. Because, back in the day with in Shakespeare's time, the actors actually would use physical poles in the theater, and they would put the lines mentally on the poles using pictures. And that's how they'd memorize their lines. And sometimes I find this very useful. I don't know.
That's what I need. I need that.
I'll talk to you about it because I think I could help you with that. because there's all these memorization techniques out there. There are people that, compete in memorization, and they have these techniques that are just unbelievably useful. So, we'll talk about that. Explain what memorize visually means. Okay, my wife Kamala is saying, explain what this means. I'll explain it to you. So for me, like words on a page, they don't have any place. They're just words and they can be jumbled around. And I think there's maybe some dyslexia in my family. So I don't see a page and see things linearly. I see lines all over the place. So they have to be grounded. So when I do a play, and I always did plays, that was the first thing that I did as an actor, I didn't have trouble memorizing the lines during the rehearsal process. And I found out why. It's because I would connect them to an action or a place on the stage or a position in space. And so like my example is I come home, I hang up my hat and I say, "Hi, honey, I'm home." So the act of hanging up the hat kind of triggers that statement. So it's tied to an action. But then when you go into audition or you go up and you're standing just in front of a mic and it's just you and there's nothing really changing, that's when it starts to go all over the place. So what I do is in my mind, I picture, first of all, even if it's like bullet points, as images. Like to be or not to be might be a bee, just a bee flying around. And then I put them in physical space. So if there's a club that I play all the time, perhaps I would put them in the club. Maybe over in the back corner, there's a bee flying around. And then I go to the next thing, which is maybe in the middle of the thing, and, or not to be. And there's like a rope tied into a knot. And I just can go from that very visually. And then I can all have that in my mind wherever I go. Like even if I'm in a different place, I could have that room in my mind and be able to just cue myself. And sometimes it's just there if you need it. Because, as you know, if you do a routine, a lot of times it becomes in your body to the point where you don't even have to think about it. But if you ever get lost, which actors and performers often get lost, you can always go to some physical place in your mind and go, oh yeah, to be or not to be. So it takes a little bit of practice, but I find it to be, it really revolutionized my ability to memorize things. Let's see what the chat room has to say. Lauren, who's also a comedian, says, visuals help me and repetition of saying or doing. Yeah, so a lot of times you will learn something physically in your body by saying it over and over again as well. Howard says, I still think his stage name should be Mike Knox. I think you do need something like an extra little thing, because isn't there like a wrestler named Mike Knox?
Yes, there is. Yeah, I've got his action figure actually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
My wife
actually, and there's a rapper, Mike Knox, G Unit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what Charles says. Can we see this Joel Marshall stand up this evening at the store? Yeah, get me over there. I'm at the store right now. Yeah, so Mike Knox, maybe you need Mike Fort Knox just to differentiate you. So I'm going to do something.
If I'm getting paid, I'll do it.
All right. I'm going to do something really weird now, is we're going to go to a crazy story. I'm going to have Mike tell a crazy story. Are you ready? Are you prepared to tell us a crazy story out of nowhere?
I think I can remember it.
All right,
I'll
cool.
try.
Yeah, now that we talked about that. All right, so here we go. We're going to go into the Trash Panda comedy room, and Mike's going to tell a story. Here we go. I'm the audience, the live audience.
Okay, so when I worked in a prison, you get to know the inmates, and I got to know this one guy, and he was a pro-am golfer, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And so this is when I was working in segregation. So there's no TV in your cell, there's no radio. You get to know these guys, you're talking well to them. And so we usually would nickname the inmates. And so we nicknamed this guy Tin Cup because he was a pro-am golfer. And he had, I didn't really think he deserved to be in prison, but he had bought a Chevy Tahoe and returned it the next day without any seats. So they charged him with grand theft, sent him to prison, and he wound up in the hole. Yeah. So while he was there, he started to kind of, you mentally decline when you're in this cement box pretty much. And he started to write love letters to Tori Spelling, the actress. And then he started to send her gifts. He didn't have any money at all, so it was state items. It was like salt and pepper. It was like ketchup. Then he like sent bottles of his. Somehow he got a bottle and he sent like bottles of his urine. That didn't bother her though.
Britney
He sent
Spears?
her no, it was Tori Spelling.
Oh, Tori Spelling. Oh yeah, I
Tori
thought
Spelling.
Britney Spears because she's incarcerated as well. Anyway,
Yes. And so
to Tori Spelling.
then he made a jacket for her. It was his Levi's State Prison. It said State Prison on the back, and then he had made "I Love Tori" in mosaic with broken parts of the mirror from his cell. So that really upset her, and her dad was alive at the time. So the feds came to the prison, and they were furious, and they had all these photos of all the gifts that he had sent her, and they're very dramatic, and they're demanded to know. By the way, he had the 8x10 color glossy photos because this was before the internet.
Yeah.
So they slammed their fist down. The investigators wanted to know what is wrong with this guy, and I said, "Well, he's mentally ill." And they were like, "How do you know he's mentally ill?" And I said, "Because he's stalking Tori Spelling." I mean, you got to be crazy
He
to be
sent
stalking
her his urine.
from prison. And so I've always wanted to meet Tori Spelling to ask her about that stalker, but.
Wow.
That was one of my crazy stories.
Did that happen a lot? People would mail stuff to people?
Yeah, that did happen.
Is that a thing to do? Like that's a pastime in prison? I can't get out, but at least I can send stuff. I didn't even know you could do that.
There's nothing else. There's nothing else you can do. I mean, there's so much downtime, so much boredom in prison because you're not required to do anything. You're sitting in your cell. So yeah, there's a lot of letter writing going on.
Yeah. Interesting. Kind of frightening to start getting, especially urine.
Yeah, very frightening.
My wife worked with Tori Spelling on Beverly Hills 90210. Yeah. And Charles Goldsmith says that really pissed her off when they sent the urine. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Chuck gets a joke in. Yeah. Did he get out of prison and get better? We don't know.
I lost touch with him, but he was doing like under a year. So.
Oh, wow.
It was a short
All right.
stay.
So this has been the Trash Panda Comedy Club. Crazy story. Mike, the big house Knox. I don't know. All right, let's go on. All right. Thanks, Mike, for that. We're gonna have to end the show now. But this has been super interesting and just fascinating on so many levels. And it's just great having you here. We're now in the green room, off stage. That was a crazy story. So where can people see you perform? Are you performing now, or are you doing any Zoom shows or anything like that?
I'm not doing anything right now just because of COVID.
Yeah.
Stuff pops up now and then.
Yeah.
What I'm working on right now, hopefully that'll come out as an article in Skill Set magazine about prison weapons, and hopefully that's going to come out soon. That's what I'm working on right now.
Did you do some kind of art installation or something with prison
I
weapons?
did. I've had quite a few art shows with prison. The things that I collected. That was another thing about prison was that nobody really. I found it odd. Nobody really wanted to collect anything, and you're finding all this great stuff that's made out of basically nothing. And so I've had quite a few art shows called Artifacts of Confinement, and so they were items that I collected in the prison.
Wow, that's fascinating. So weapons that people made out of prison items. Is that right?
Yes. So you get tattoo guns and stingers and shivs and shanks, and you find stuff all the time because you're constantly searching cells.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty scary exhibit. But also,
it is.
It's an exercise in ingenuity, I suppose.
It was definitely hard for me to get that to when I started to shop it around. That's the response that I got was, this is way too horrifying. And I finally found a curator of a museum that was like, oh, this is fascinating. So,
yeah. Wow. All right. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to have a dance break here, but I'm going to let you go. And, if you want to come on anytime, tell some more prison crazy stories, you're perfectly welcome. If you want to do poetry like Howard, although that's a very difficult high level writing there. Maybe you can do it.
Yes.
I don't know. Lauren says, great show. Got to go. My daughter and I are driving to see the Violent Femmes. Yes. I saw the Violent Femmes a couple of years ago. I love it. Try to get them to play I Hear the Rain. It's one of my favorites. Have a great weekend, everybody. All right, we'll see you, Mike. I'm going to move on to the dance
Thank you.
break. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right, so this is Still Loving You. Scorpions, played by Fernando Ufret. Rex is saying, trying to get you to show the flyer. Yeah, we showed it. We promoted it, top of the show. I'm going to show a little. I got to be quiet. Great to see you, Rex, Lauren, everybody. I love this song. I can't even. You know, when the Scorpions sang this song, they sang it phonetically, I think. Violent Femmes. Let's go the distance. Let's do it. We got to get to the fight. It's a very like tension and release song. Look, she's playing the bass too. Yeah, we might as well go the distance, right?
To trust in my love again, I will be there.
Thanks, Rex.
I will
There's our plug for Thursday of next week, 3 p.m. All things Rex. Ginny, Joel, Kamala. Oh, yeah. Going the distance with this. It's not going to be 7 minutes. Well, maybe it is. Yeah, you're right. They're just so good. It's such a great song.
Your pride has built a wall so strong that I can't get through. Is there really no chance to start once again? If we go again all the way from the start, I will
Right, yeah.
I'm still loving you. I'm still loving you. I need your love. I'm still loving you. Still loving you, baby. I'm still loving you. I need your love.
Yeah,
I'm still
baby.
loving you. I need your love.
Fernando, yeah.
Still loving you.
Klaus and Hammond of the Scorpions.
Still loving you. I need your love.
This is awesome.